All right, everyone, welcome back into another Fantasy Golf video. Going to be breaking down the 2025 Sony Open here for you. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so giving you guys the video breakdown, going to do a quick recap from last week. I do think there's a couple of little teaching moments there. Solid week last week. Hopefully you guys know that. We'll be getting into the tournament preview, just talking about what we need to know and what we need to focus on to be able to predict which golfers to be on. And then we'll get into the top golf plays, whether it be for DFS or for betting. We'll be touching on my favorite outright bets and core plays for the Sony Open, and then getting into the lineup process. So for DFS, showing you guys my first look build, and then we'll compare that against what the 9-to-5 data is telling us is going to be the optimal build. And that's kind of a good starting point for the recap last week. This was the optimal build last week that the 9-to-5 data liked a little bit more, which obviously really good results there. We'll take that for sure. I was telling you guys, no, let's not do that. We know that we should kind of just do more of a studs and duds approach, and that ended up being the good source of profitability there for us. Really, regardless, it didn't really matter. It was just a very good 9-to-5 data day. But the process was clear. I mean, we know what to do on these no-cut events. Studs and duds it. Try to maximize your upside to get a player to finish top 5. We were able to do that with SunJam and Morikawa finishing top 5, and then really was able to nail Jonathan Vegas, but really most of the players in the player pool ended up outplaying their price tag. Only 3 players in this player pool specifically did not finish better than kind of what they're ranked or expected to do based off of their salary. So they all finished a little bit better than that, which is obviously awesome. We'd love to see that. Of the 13 players that I had in that player pool, 30% of them finished top 5, which is pretty nice to see. Again, pretty profitable week. I guess the only downside was outright wise. We didn't have an outright winner. Did have another Sunday sweat. Basically every single week we always are going to have a Sunday sweat. It's pretty awesome. And then about 20% of the weeks we're going to cash one. Did not happen for us last week. Was on Kyle Morikawa at 11-1. The 9-to-5 data, however, was on Hideki. This is kind of the 9-to-5 AI, if you will, where it's taken all the key characteristics of the previous year's winners on the PGA Tour and then putting into a data point to highlight which golfers are considered good outright bets. Hideki was there. I wasn't on him. Kind of, oh well. Now, another thing that's worth calling out is I was purposely tweeting out a bunch of like placement bets, or not really placement bets, head-to-head bets, 3-ball bets and whatnot as well, just to be able to measure it. And so taking all the bets that I kind of recommended last week in that regard, did not hit it outright, did not hit the first round lead. One of the easiest bets on the week was Patrick Cantlay over Justin Thomas. That one cashed pretty easily, but including the 3-ball bets, which is a pretty good source of profitability, plus 4 units on the week that way. So whether it be DFS or betting, able to have a good profitable week. Now, to me, guys, the slight kind of teaching moment that we have, and I ended up tweeting this out, was talking about JT and his ownership. It was very strange. There really wasn't any good logic behind it. I didn't look into kind of really why people were on JT. My assumption is that, all right, he's coming in high price. He's probably ended up low owned. We can maybe chase that upside with a kind of too high price player that's going to come in low owned. Maybe we can chase that upside. But the moment he was coming in as chalky, it should have been probably the easiest fade. Honestly, I think it'll end up being the easiest fade on the whole season compared to the other golfers around him and even like below him as well. There's plenty of other better plays. The risk wasn't nearly worth the reward. It was just kind of a head scratcher there. That was one of the easier fades. Honestly, I think we'll get on the season there. And in a no-cut event where ownership does end up mattering, I think that was a big reason as to why it was such a sweat-free week DFS-wise. And on that note, it is interesting. Like JT did not pop up here as someone that was overowned, but look at this. Most of the players that were coming in a little bit overvalued ended up really not playing all that well. So nice job there with the 9-to-5 data. Now, guys, I must say, I hate the kind of self-pat on the back for a really awesome week. Again, it's just, I don't know, kind of annoying. But let's go ahead and get into the Sony Open here, guys. Very interesting week this week, and I think kind of the overall thought process for this week should somewhat be the same as last week, where it is still early on in the season. A lot of these golfers, even more so this week, we haven't seen competitively in quite some time. A lot of these golfers at least 3 months off competitively. That's going to lead to a little bit more of random results. We are going to see that. That typically does happen this week. And sometimes we'll get a little bit too much bias, maybe targeting players from last week's event and maybe overvaluing them a little bit this week. Now, we should be targeting those golfers. Players that played last week at the Century tend to play better at the Sony Open. We want to be playing those players, but it's also not something that we have to go crazy with. Now, I do want to call out the weather here as well, just real quick. It could end up being a factor. Okay, we're getting about on Thursday, 18, 19, 20, and 21 mile per hour winds. So unlike last week where the course didn't really have that much defense due to it not being windy, this course could end up playing maybe a little bit more difficult than it has in the past. Now, there is rain in the forecast that could end up softening the greens, but this tournament could end up playing a little bit more difficult than it has over the past few years. So we see the winning score is 17, 18, then 23, 21. It might be closer to, I don't know, I'd probably still say about 17, but definitely could play a little bit more difficult. So we'll go ahead and take a peek at the golfers that are going to be those good kind of golfers in terms of course history here. What we're going to look at is golfers that have made multiple starts here over the past 4 years. Again, looking at the past 4 years, that's when the data is most significant for course history. Benny Ann actually popping up in there with a 2nd and 12th. Nick Taylor's had good results, 2 7th place finishes and 11th. Russell Henley's been someone that we're going to be on a little bit later on in this video. He's played extremely well here. Chris Kirk, he'll be an interesting click. But there are actually a plenty of golfers that have played this course well, and plenty of golfers that we're probably going to be looking at this week because they played last week as well. Now, the nice thing about this week, guys, is that we do know which key stats to be looking at for this week. All right, we're looking at birdie to bogey ratio. We see golfers that tend to excel in that tend to be the ones that play better. Now, that can be a little bit different depending on the weather and depending on how the course is playing, but this course is going to play a little bit more difficult, so we want to be looking at birdie to bogey ratio over birdie or better percentage. Par 4 scoring over the past 20 is what I'm looking at, and what you guys will notice here is that instead of looking at the season stats, I'm looking at the last 5, last 20, and so that is actually naturally pulling in these golfers that we have very small sample sizes on, okay? Most likely one start. Now, that's going to be adjusted in the 9 to 5 mile to not really account for those golfers that maybe have one to start, or kind of discount those golfers a little bit. But on this page, I don't like to do that. I just like to show you guys the full sample. But if we kind of ignore some of those golfers that we know have small samples in there, Hideki would then be the best stat fit, then Corey Connors, then Taylor Pendrith, Rico Hoy, okay, Harry Hall is someone that I think we'll be clicking on, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, Luke Clanton's popping up in there, Lucas Glover, Siwoo Kim. So a lot of players that either have good course history or played last week, which kind of gets me excited about this week. The issue that I've seen thus far this week, guys, is that there's almost too many good golf plays this week, which is a little bit interesting. Jumping into the golfers with the best recent form. Again, guys, take this with a grain of salt. A lot of these guys we haven't seen in quite some time. Utah here is a good example of that. He has one start, guys. Again, this is adjusted for in the model, but I don't like to take that off. So in the 2 starts that we have for him in the 9 to 5 database, 2 top 10 finishes for him, no cut events, but oh well. Billy Horschel popping up in there with some good form. Then you got Taylor Pendrith, Russell Henley, Jeremy Paul, another guy in the database with a small sample size. If you look at his Korn Ferry Tour starts, not really popping up in there. Then Benny Ann, Corey Connors. But really what I think we want to be looking at is some of the specialist data, kind of the unique course characteristics data points that we have. We could be looking at weather, maybe which golfers play best in this kind of potential weather. But really what I think is the most interesting is the course length. This is a lower or shorter track. And really what I want to see, again, are going to be those golfers that, one, we have enough data on, like Andrew Novak's popping up in there, Tom Kim, Taylor Montgomery, Denny McCarthy, Corey Connors, Ben Griffin, Keegan Bradley. And so a lot of those shorter hitters tend to play well at this track. And so I don't know if I really want to go out of my way to necessarily target these golfers that are great golfers on these shorter tracks, but there are going to be golfers that certainly in 50-50 decisions, this will be a data point that I go in. Like if I'm, for example, let's say I'm deciding between Hideki or Corey Connors, for example, because Corey Connors is a better short track golfer, I'll probably go with Corey Connors. If that was like in my head, a true 50-50 split, I think that's the best way to go about looking at, but certainly a lot of interesting data points. Like we could look at the greens, location, even course designer being a Robert Trent Jones course. And then Corey Connors, he's going to pop up extremely well. He's going to be one of the top plays. And let's actually just go ahead and get into those top plays this week. And so let's start out with Corey Connors. So Corey Connors, guys, last year was a letdown here. Finished 57th there, okay? But prior to that, 12th, 11th, good results there. If you look at his kind of stat fit for us, guys, really good birdie to bogey ratio. Over his last 5 starts, first in the field there. Actually putted extremely well last week. Maybe that's a sign of things to come this week. If that happens, if he continues to putt that well, he's going to be someone that will, I mean, honestly, could win this week pretty easily. It's a little bit of an easier field, but we're going to experience some good results from him. But Even over his past 5 starts as well, he has been someone that has been putting maybe a little bit better than I would have expected. Top 20 in par 4 scoring over the past 20 starts, and then ball striking as well, extremely well there, as we would come to expect there with Corey Connors. I like the fact that we can get him at 16-1 currently on BetMGM as well. And then, yeah, again, guys, looking at all the specialist data that we have coming in, kind of all that unique course characteristics, nothing alarming there. Maybe course style a little bit, with it being more of a seaside course, but again, with it being a shorter track, I don't really care. Tremendous form coming in off of a 5th place finish for us last week, and he was someone that was really popping up last week. I think in the 9-to-5 like peer model, I think he was like top 5. And I say that, guys, because we have the 9-to-5 model rank here, which is a little bit different than the model rank as a whole. The model rank is taking into account Vegas odds of both making the cut and also their likelihood to win. But he, through and through, to me, is kind of the easiest play, and you guys will be hearing from him later on. That's just that way. It's a good tease for the core plays and outright bets. But Russell Henley is going to be a golfer that we want to be going out of our way to target there as well. Tremendous course history, as I already mentioned. 4 straight made cuts here. Worst finish being a 32nd, and then also 2 top 10 finishes, 3 top 12 finishes here over the past 4 years. You can get him at 20-1. Honestly, that feels a little bit crazy. I do feel like he's someone we should be going out of our way to target. Coming in as the 2nd best pick in the 9-to-5 model. Again, kind of looking at all the specialist data points, he is someone that really pops up there as well. Going to be overall the 5th best specialist in the field, really just coming in, checking all the boxes. The one concern that we might have from him last week was the fact that he finished 30th, but I kind of see it as a plus. One, he played last week. Didn't play terrible, didn't play great. 30th there, kind of, oh well. He was still able to score. If he plays kind of that way again this week, he will be able to make the cut at the very least, right? And honestly, early season, like if we can just bank on a player making the cut, I will take that. And hopefully the other players kind of pick up for us. Again, early season, guys, there's just a lot of random results. It's just golfers haven't played that much. Especially competitively. We don't know which players are having maybe an injury, maybe switch gears, maybe caddies. We might actually know the caddy stuff. Maybe coaching changes. Like that's all stuff that we'll find out in the months to come here, but we just don't have a lot of that information. So if we can target golfers like this that have strong likelihood to make the cut, but also give us a top finish, I like that there with Russell Henley. So from there, I don't really love any players after that. Like Keegan Bradley certainly is a player that I think I'd be more likely to outright bet than like make a core play. And that's just because of the hit or miss nature that he's had this course. Runner-up finisher last year, miscut, and then 12th, and then miscut. So kind of spotty course history, but when he's playing well here, he has played well, which kind of makes sense. I do expect him to go out and putt well on this track. And really all the key stats that we're looking at for him, top 10 in the field stat fit wise. So we'll take that. Pretty good form as well. Price tag's fine. I'm okay with him. I don't mind really any of the options up here, but obviously I think we're going to go top heavy with probably Henley and Connors. But Robert McIntyre is a player that I do think is sneaky as well, coming in as the 6th best pick in the 9-to-5 mile. So he does have course experience at this course, which is obviously pretty huge. Maybe not the best staff it as a whole, but not terrible. 17th best in the field, recent form, also top 16 in the field. Like he's just a good enough play across the board, which at his price tag, I could shrug my shoulders and end up on him. Now, I do really, really like Taylor Pendrith as a play this week. He's going to be someone that I feel like is going to be very difficult to avoid. So he has made 2 starts at this track. Okay, 1 miscut, and then last year, a top 10 place finish. I almost think we can kind of just not look at that miscut a few years ago because, well, he's kind of been a different player over the past year and a half or so now, to the point where he is a tremendous staff in the field, guys. Top 5 staff in the field, 3rd best recent form in the field as well. He has that top 10 finish. I honestly feel like this is just a misprice. Like I don't know why he's not $1,000 more expensive. It'll be interesting to see how chalky he is. To me, it kind of feels like an easier click. Now, maybe some of the specialist data is maybe what worries us, maybe struggles on these greens a little bit more. Maybe not the best bad weather player, course style, not the best there as well. Like maybe that's like in retrospect, we can come back and see that stuff. Those are kind of secondary data points that we look at. In terms of like the primary data points that we like to see, really looks like a good play. And he's still top 12 specialist rank. So across the board, Taylor Pendrith is someone that I do think we should be looking at. And I really love the odds for him. 45-1, you can get a bet online, which is crazy. Obviously, if you're betting on more of the popular sites, 35-1 across the board. Feels like a pretty easy bet and honestly, pretty easy click for DFS. From there, we do have a lot of decent plays like Austin Eckroat, Kurt Kitayama, Davis Thompson I like a lot. But Ben Griffin and Harry Hall here are two players that I feel like are a little bit too low priced. Looking at Ben Griffin, obviously played last week. Sorry, did not play last week. I did a bunch of best ball drafts. I'm thinking of him there where he was like a first round pick for best balls. Those people need him to show up here. But he is someone that did have a pretty good fall swing. You know, the past few times that we saw him, all pretty darn good finishes there for him. This is an event that he has played well at in the past. 2 straight make cuts here at this track. A okay staff fit. I mean, obviously in a field like this where it's not, you know, too crazy of a good field, once we start to get lower down in price, we're obviously going to be missing something in the plays. With him, it's a staff hit, but he makes up for that being a pretty good specialist. And overall, still ranking out as a pretty solid play across the board. But compared to this next golfer, I mean, Harry Hall is like clearly mispriced. I expect Taylor Pendrith to be pretty chalky and kind of the obvious play, but I really expect Harry Hall to be extreme chalk this week. So Harry Hall has made 2 starts here on this track, which a little bit shocking to me. Honestly, I did not realize that. And so I love that. The fact that he has made starts here. In case you guys don't know, I did this very big deep dive like 2 years ago into the data. Pretty much one of the most important data points, especially when looking at course history, was the fact that a player had made a start at a track. The second most important was them not missing a cut at the track in terms of leading them to be a predictable play for that week, in terms of them making the cut, and then also having like a top 5 finish, top 10, all that stuff. And so love the fact that not only has he made starts here, has made 2 straight cuts here at this track, which is awesome. 42nd and 28th place finish there for him. He is a very darn good putter, guys. 8th best putter in the field. The rest of the stats are all there as well. 8th best staff in the field. Specialist-wise, not the best specialist as a whole. Though, again, with the weather, maybe we start to worry about that with him. He's someone that could find himself in trouble is kind of what I'm reading here. But he's just been playing such good golf. 8th place finish last week, 14th at the Worldwide Technologies Championship, Zozo, 13th, Shriners, 8th. Honestly, don't get this price tag. He's someone that played last week for us. So we have that. Again, we kind of want to be naturally targeting those golfers a little bit more. He should honestly be at least $1,000 more. This is a strange one. And the fact that we're still getting him at 55 to 1, 50 to 1 on some sites is kind of crazy. I expect this number to go down to 30. It's just like an easy click here at this price tag. This is one of those players, even Pendrith has price tag, but this is one of those players that if he misses the cut, it's kind of like, oh, well, it was the correct decision. I'm okay with that, especially for early on in the season. Like, oh, well. This is a player where one and done wise, I don't even want to give that out, but I could see playing him one and done wise. He might be popular, but that way you're maybe not wasting. I mean, I'm not too worried about wasting Corey Connors or Russell Huntley, but that way you're not wasting them and you're still getting a guy that ranks out top 10 that maybe might not have as much ownership. I don't hate that. And then, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the low tier here. Nico is going to be someone I'm looking at again this week. To me, he is also pretty mispriced. He did what we wanted him to do last week, guys, finishing 32nd at almost the mid-price. I shouldn't say almost the mid-price, but I think it was like bottom 12 golfers in terms of pricing, like 6.5. Whatever. He outplayed his price tag. That was the whole point of him. Continued the good form that he's in. Maybe didn't score as much. I think it was in round 3, but again, gave us the desired result that we wanted. He's made 2 for 2 cuts here at this tournament. Now, he finished 66 last year at this track. I don't know if you guys remember, there's a bunch of golfers that made the cut. I think there was like overall like 74 or 75 golfers that made the cut last year at this tournament. Kind of do not hope for that this week. But 2 for 2 in terms of make cuts here. I think that's a good mental aspect for him, knowing the fact that he was able to grind through and make the cut at this tournament last year when maybe he wasn't playing the best golf. Obviously, clearly playing great golf right now. And so again, looking at the course history, the fact that he has made 2 cuts at this track and now we get him in probably the best golf that he's ever played in his life, that is awesome. Again, kind of a clear misprice here. I think he's a solid play for us again this week. I don't know if we need to get to him outright wise, but I also wouldn't hate it. He is a solid play across the board. Another player I don't mind is going to be Patrick Fishburne. Now, we haven't seen him play since the RSM Classic, but I mean, that's going to be the case with a lot of golfers, especially the lower on we get. We can see recent form had been pretty darn solid, though, kind of leading into this event. Decent stat fit, 31st ranked play overall. Kind of just a good enough play at that price, like more of a shoulder shrug option. Andrew Putnam, I do think, is an interesting click here as well. Clearly has good course history, 10th, 4th, 27th, and then miscut. He is someone that, hasn't exactly been playing well, but hasn't been playing terribly as well. He is someone that in this field, I do expect him to be able to make the cut, especially at a course that's much more suited for his game. But again, more of a shoulder shrug play. There's not that many players this low that I feel like we need to be going out of our way to target. I don't mind the idea of getting to Chris Kirk, who does have good course history here as well. Now, Chris Kirk, his form has been off. Again, we shouldn't read too much into it, but the fact that we saw his last start prior to last week be a miscut at the RSM Classic, and then he fouled it up last week with the 44th place finish, a little bit alarming, but again, Very good course fit here for this track. Has played really well at this tournament. 4 straight make cuts with multiple top 10 finishes. Like, we should be looking at that play. Now, in terms of sub 7K plays, these values that we should be looking at, I don't mind the idea of getting to Patton Kizzire, who, again, is a player that has played this course multiple times, has good results here at this tournament, with 2 top 15 place finishes here over the past 4 years, which is pretty darn good. The worry here is that he is a bad stat fit, and kind of look at his form, it has been a little bit spotty, but we're getting him at 6.9. I do think he has an okay chance to make the cut. My data is actually giving him a 63% chance to make the cut, so actually might not be a bad made cut bet once those odds come out. And then the only other play like that's, I mean, I don't mind Yuta there for what it's worth, the Japanese golfer that played well at the Zozo Championship, but Ben Silverman, I don't mind here as well. He's a golfer that played this tournament last year, made the cut, top 20 finish. Overall, he grades out as someone that should be kind of in line to make the cut. We see the form there. Again, okay. Given the field here, if he gives us kind of these results, I do expect him to be able to make the cut. He does feel mispriced. How mispriced? I mean, $200, $300, but maybe that'll be the difference between us having, 5 out of 6 or 6 for 6 if he's someone you guys end up as a value play. All right, guys, so we're going to be jumping into the core plays here. I also don't mind these golfers as outright bets. They're going to be good there. We'll show you guys the first look build, show you guys the optimal build per the 9-to-5 lineup optimizer. But first, before we do that, guys, just give a like to the video, subscribe to the channel. That does help out the channel grow a ton. All right, let's jump into those core plays. So core play number 1, you guys probably could have guessed it, is going to be Corey Conners. Okay, Corey Conners obviously been in tremendous form with a top 5 finish last week. Love that there from him. Course history is still pretty good. Last year struggled at this tournament, but was still able to make the cut. Finished 57th, 12th, and 11th prior to that. Top 5 staff in the field. I'm giving him a projected finish of top 10, but honestly, if I'm being honest with you guys, if he keeps up that putting, I'm expecting him to win. From there, we go ahead and jump into Russell Henley. Feels like the exact same play as Corey Conners. Would have loved a better finish out of him last week, but still 30th, whatever, last week. Has tremendous course history here. He's going to be a tremendous play. He is actually a golfer that ranks out top 10 or better in all the metrics that we're looking at, where Corey Conners ranked 13th in course history, so slightly getting knocked there. Both of these two golfers, to me, are clearly the choices we want to be going out of our way to make, especially at their price tags. From there, jumping into Taylor Pendrith. You guys probably could have guessed all these core plays I'm going to be on, but he is a phenomenal play this week. Obviously, a great stat fit. Tremendous form here as well. Top 20 or better in his last 4 starts. Has a top 10 finish at this tournament as well. So this guy has a lot of upside at this tournament. I really like him as an outright bet at 35-1. That is a bet that I do expect the number to come down on as the week progresses. And then lastly, guys, the easiest click I would say on the week is going to be Harry Hall, both outright wise and DFS wise. It's just the correct play, whether it works out or not, kind of, oh well. Okay, again, I say that because it's early season. There's a lot of high variance stuff that can happen, but he's a really good putter. Don't expect him to make too many mistakes. Tremendous form for him. That carried over into this season. Going to be a top 10 stat fit. And again, just clearly mispriced to the point where he is pretty easy to fit into our builds. And so the issue, though, that I have this week is that if we put all 4 of those core plays into our lineup, we're struggling at the end there. So the build I'm going to show you guys here will probably change. It probably will. I mentioned Utah a bunch as and I'm probably saying his name kind of wrong. Probably. But we did see him as a top 10 place finisher at the Zozo Championship. I mean, at 6.2, whatever, I can kind of hope to get lucky there. Again, this will probably change. Can almost guarantee it. But then from there, if we do that, we are able to get to, I don't know, Hendrik Norlander, I'm okay with. Smalley. Ben Silverman was a guy that I recommended. It's kind of an okay first look build. It'll be interesting now to see if the 9-to-5 data, and really what I want to see is the roster construction that the data is telling us to do. I don't really care about maybe the players necessarily right now. I mean, obviously we do. So let's take a peek at that. All right, guys. So to give the 9-to-5 database, or we need to give the 9-to-5 database 2 points to go off, 2 data points to go off of. So we're just going to round up here for Corey Conners and also Russell Henley. Whatever, both of them at 34 is what we're going to do. And we'll just click generate. Again, I just want to see kind of what it's telling us to do at the start of the week so you guys can kind of get an idea of what we should potentially be doing. We'll zoom in here. It is gained to Russell Henley. Pendrith, Luke Clan, it does like. Utah, I will say, it's going to like it a lot, even still with the small sample size adjustment. So what I did is I adjusted his projection down a little bit more. And so a little bit of a better build. It likes Matt McCarty a decent amount. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I like this build okay. Like Patrick Rogers is a player I didn't mention. I think he's pretty solid. We do see Nico getting into another build here as well. It does like Ben Griffin a lot, but what I'm seeing here is definitely more of a fair and balanced build this week is kind of what it's promoting. which I'm okay with. But the thing here this week, guys, is if we go down that path of maybe doing fair and balanced, then we start to entertain McCarty as a play, Seamus Power as a play who's popping up in here. To me, it becomes much more cloudy, honestly, because there's so many. There's like 30 players that I probably could end up on, that I will probably end up on. But from like the 8.5 range to the 7K range, there's about 20 golfers I could probably like make a good argument for. And to me, that's the more difficult part about this week. So I might intentionally just try to stay away from that, especially in terms of my hand-built lineups. Maybe for 150 lineups, we can entertain that. Like, who cares? We can plan for the randomness there at that point. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. If you guys want access to any of the tools that you saw in this video, the 9-to-5 cheat sheet or the 9-to-5 lineup optimizer, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to those for just $10 a month. Take advantage of that, guys. Thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.